He opened the door and saw a stranger standing there, a stranger holding a photograph of her from 20 years ago, a photograph taken on September 11, 2001, in the rubble of the South Tower. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching this from today? United Kingdom, America, or somewhere else in the world? Have you ever met someone who completely changed your life without even knowing it? Let me know in the comments. Because today's story is about firefighter Mike Johnson, who saved a woman on September 11th but never learned her name. And 20 years later, when that woman showed up at his door, Mike's life was never the same again. Mike Johnson was 32 years old on September 11th, 2001. He had been a firefighter with the New York Fire Department for 8 years, stationed at Engine Company 10, House 10, the firehouse located directly across the street from the World Trade Center. Every morning when Mike reported for duty, he would look up at those twin towers and feel a strange mixture of awe and unease. They were so massive, so imposing, so seemingly permanent, but Mike had been trained to see buildings differently than most people. He saw exit routes, fire hazards, structural weaknesses. He saw all the ways things could go wrong. On the morning of September 11th, Mike was finishing a night shift. His replacement was running late, so Mike was still at the firehouse when the first plane hit the North Tower at 8:46 a.m. The sound was like nothing he had ever heard, a thunderous explosion followed by a deep, rumbling vibration that shook the entire firehouse. Mike ran outside and looked up. The North Tower had a gaping hole in its side, flames and smoke pouring out. His training took over immediately. This wasn't a time for shock or fear. This was a time for action. Within minutes, every available firefighter in Lower Manhattan was rushing toward the towers. Mike and his company grabbed their gear and ran across the street. The lobby of the North Tower was already chaos, debris falling, people screaming, the smell of jet fuel and burning materials filling the air. "We're going up," his captain shouted. "Search and rescue. Every floor, every office. We bring people down." Mike grabbed his equipment, 60 pounds of gear including breathing apparatus, tools and rope, and started climbing. The elevators weren't working. Everything had to be done on foot, up stairwell after stairwell, passing panicked office workers fleeing downward. By the time Mike reached the 20th floor of the North Tower, he was already exhausted. His breathing was labored, his legs were burning, but he kept climbing. Every floor they searched offices, called out for survivors, helped the injured. Then at 9:03 a.m. the second plane hit the South Tower. The entire North Tower shook. Mike grabbed onto a railing to keep from falling. Through the windows he could see the South Tower erupting in flames. In that moment, every firefighter in both towers knew the same terrible truth. This wasn't an accident, this was an attack. "Keep moving," the captain ordered. "People are trapped above the impact zones. We need to get as many out as possible." Mike continued climbing, but something had changed. The building felt different. There were strange creaking sounds, subtle shifts in the structure that his trained senses picked up. The North Tower was damaged, and with each passing minute, it was becoming less stable. At 9:59 a.m. Mike heard a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A deep, groaning rumble that seemed to come from the earth itself. Then his radio crackled with words that made his blood freeze. "South Tower is coming down. South Tower is coming down." Mike ran to a window and watched in horror as the South Tower, 110 stories of steel and concrete, collapsed in on itself. The tower where thousands of people had been working just minutes ago was now a massive cloud of dust and debris. If this story is already affecting you, imagine how it ends. Hit that subscribe button now, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about heroism and second chances. The collapse of the South Tower sent a shockwave through the North Tower. Debris flew everywhere, windows shattered, and the entire building shuddered. Mike's captain made a decision that saved their lives. "We're evacuating. Everyone down. Now." The descent was a nightmare. Stairwells were filled with dust, debris, and panicked people. Mike helped carry injured civilians, guided disoriented office workers, and tried to keep calm while knowing that the building he was in could collapse at any moment. When Mike finally emerged from the North Tower, the scene outside was apocalyptic. The street was covered in debris, abandoned fire trucks, and a thick layer of dust that made it nearly impossible to see or breathe. But Mike didn't stop. He couldn't stop. There were still people trapped in the South Tower debris. Mike ran toward the rubble of the South Tower. The collapse had created a massive pile of twisted steel, concrete, and glass. Somewhere in that mountain of destruction were people who needed help, people who might still be alive. For the next hour, Mike worked frantically in the debris field. He could hear voices, faint cries for help coming from beneath the rubble. Every firefighter there was digging with their hands, moving pieces of concrete, searching desperately for survivors. Then Mike heard it, a woman's voice, weak but distinct, coming from beneath a section of collapsed wall. "Help, please, I can't move." Mike dropped to his knees and started digging. His hands were bleeding, his lungs were burning from the dust, but he kept going. He could see her now, a woman, maybe in her 30s, trapped beneath a beam with debris all around her. "I've got you," Mike called out. "What's your name?" "Sarah," the woman whispered. "My name is Sarah." Mike worked frantically to free her. The beam across her legs was too heavy to lift alone, but he managed to create enough space to pull her out. She was badly injured, her legs were crushed, she had a deep gash across her forehead, and she was going into shock. "Sarah, stay with me," Mike said, cradling her in his arms. "I'm getting you out of here." But as Mike lifted Sarah, he heard that sound again, the deep, terrible groaning of failing structure. The North Tower was coming down. "Run!" someone screamed. "The North Tower is collapsing." Mike had seconds to make a decision. He was 200 yards from the North Tower. If he ran and left Sarah, he might make it to safety. If he tried to carry her, they might both die. Mike didn't hesitate. He lifted Sarah into his arms and ran. The collapse of the North Tower created a pyroclastic cloud of dust and debris that rushed through the streets of Lower Manhattan like an avalanche. Mike ran as fast as he could while carrying Sarah, his lungs screaming for air, his legs threatening to give out. He made it 150 yards before the cloud overtook them. The world went completely dark. Mike couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't tell which direction was safe. He laid his body over Sarah's, using himself as a shield against the debris raining down around them. For what felt like an eternity but was probably only 2 minutes, Mike and Sarah lay in the darkness, buried under dust and small debris. Mike was certain they were going to die. He thought about his wife, his 2 daughters, all the things he'd never get to do. Then slowly, the darkness began to lift. The dust started to settle. Mike could see again. He looked down at Sarah. Her eyes were closed, her breathing was shallow, but she was alive. Mike had saved her. Other firefighters emerged from the dust cloud, coughing and disoriented. Someone helped Mike carry Sarah to a triage area where doctors were treating the injured. Mike laid her down gently on a makeshift stretcher. Sarah's eyes opened briefly. She looked at Mike, and with her last bit of strength she whispered, "Thank you, please, tell them." Then she lost consciousness, and the doctors rushed her away. Mike never heard the rest of her sentence. Tell them what? Tell who? He tried to follow, but another emergency pulled him away. There were more people to save, more fires to fight, more chaos to manage. By the time Mike thought to ask about Sarah again, hours had passed. The medical teams had evacuated dozens of injured people to hospitals all over the city. Nobody could tell him which hospital Sarah had been taken to, or even her last name. She was just one of thousands of victims that day. Mike saved Sarah's life, but he never learned what she wanted to tell him. That mystery haunted him for 20 years. If you want to know what Sarah's final words meant, subscribe now, because the truth is something Mike never could have imagined. The days after September 11th were a blur for Mike. He worked 72-hour shifts searching for survivors in the rubble. He attended funerals for 15 firefighters from his station who didn't make it out. He tried to process the trauma of everything he had witnessed, but through it all, Mike couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. He had saved 7 people that day. He knew their names, had followed their recoveries, had even attended a reunion with some of them years later. But Sarah remained a mystery. He didn't know her last name, didn't know which hospital she went to, didn't know if she even survived her injuries. Mike tried to find her. He checked hospital records, contacted survivor groups, even posted on 9/11 memorial websites, asking if anyone knew a woman named Sarah who had been rescued from the South Tower debris. But there were dozens of Sarahs, and none of them matched his description. Eventually, Mike had to accept that he might never know what happened to her. It became one of those unanswered questions that stays with you, a piece of your life story with no ending. Years passed. Mike continued working as a firefighter, though the job was never quite the same after 9/11. Every time the alarm went off, he thought about that day. Every time he entered a burning building, he remembered the sound of the towers collapsing. In 2015, after 22 years of service, Mike retired from the FDNY. He moved to a quiet neighborhood in New Jersey, bought a small house with a garden, and tried to build a peaceful life with his wife Linda. His daughters were grown now, building their own lives. Mike took up gardening. Something about working with the soil, growing things, creating life, helped heal some of the trauma he carried. He would spend hours in his garden, tending to tomatoes and roses, trying not to think about the people he couldn't save. But he never forgot Sarah. On every September 11th anniversary, Mike would think about her. He would wonder if she survived, if she recovered from her injuries, if she went on to live a full life, if she ever thought about the firefighter who pulled her from the rubble. Mike had long conversations with Linda about it. "Why does this one bother you so much?" she asked. "You saved 7 people that day. That's 7 families who still have their loved ones because of you." "I know," Mike would say, "but Sarah, I don't know. There was something about her last words. Please tell them." "Tell who? Tell them what? It feels like unfinished business." "Maybe you're not meant to know," Linda suggested gently. "Maybe some stories don't get endings." Mike tried to accept that. He really did. But the mystery lingered like a ghost, always there in the background of his thoughts. Then, on September 11th, 2021, exactly 20 years after the attacks, Mike's doorbell rang. Mike was in his garden as he often was on 9/11 anniversaries. It was his way of honoring the day, creating life instead of dwelling on death. Linda called out from the house, "Mike, there's someone at the door for you." Mike wiped the dirt from his hands and walked to the front door. When he opened it, he saw a woman in her early 50s standing on his porch. She was holding a photograph. The woman's eyes were filled with tears. "Are you Michael Johnson? Firefighter Michael Johnson, who served at Engine 10, House 10. "I am," Mike said, confused. "Can I help you?" The woman's voice broke as she spoke. 20 years ago today, you saved my life. You pulled me from the rubble of the South Tower. My name is Sarah Mitchell." Mike felt like the world had stopped spinning. Sarah. After 20 years of wondering, she was standing right in front of him. "Sarah," Mike whispered, "you survived, you're okay. Because of you," Sarah said. "You carried me out when the North Tower was falling. You used your body to shield me from the debris. You saved my life." Mike's mind was racing with 1,000 questions, but all he could manage was, "I looked for you. For years I tried to find you. I never knew what happened to you." Sarah smiled through her tears. "I know, I tried to find you too, but the records from that day were so chaotic. It took me 18 years to track you down, and when I finally did, I wasn't sure if I should come. I didn't know if you'd want to be reminded of that day." "Of course I wanted to know," Mike said. "I've thought about you every September 11th for 20 years. Your last words to me, you said please tell them, but you never finished. I've always wondered what you wanted to say." Sarah's tears flowed freely now. "Can I come in? There's something I need to show you, something you need to know about that day." Sarah has been searching for Mike for 18 years. She's holding a photograph and a secret that will change everything Mike thought he knew about that day. Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe right now. Mike led Sarah into his living room. Linda brought tea, sensing that this was a moment of profound importance. Sarah sat down, still clutching the photograph she had brought. "Mike," Sarah began, "I want to start by showing you this." She handed Mike the photograph. It was old, creased, and slightly damaged, but the image was clear. It showed Sarah, covered in dust and blood, being carried in Mike's arms. In the background, the cloud of debris from the North Tower collapse was visible. "A photographer took this," Sarah explained, "right before the tower came down. It was published in newspapers around the world. Firefighter saves woman in final moments before collapse." But they never identified either of us in the caption. Mike stared at the photograph. He had never seen it before. Looking at it now, he could remember that exact moment, the weight of Sarah in his arms, the sound of the collapsing tower, the absolute certainty that they were both about to die. "I've carried this photo with me every day for 20 years, Sarah said. "It reminds me that I'm living on borrowed time, that every day since September 11th, 2001 has been a gift I didn't expect to receive." "I'm so glad you survived," Mike said. "But Sarah, you said you tried to find me. Why? What did you want to tell me?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Mike, when you pulled me from that rubble, when you carried me through that dust cloud, when you used your body to protect me, you didn't just save one life, you saved 2. Mike looked confused. "2? I don't understand." Sarah's voice trembled with emotion. "Mike, I was pregnant, 6 weeks pregnant. I didn't even know it yet on September 11th. But 3 weeks later, when I was recovering in the hospital, the doctors told me, despite everything, the trauma, the injuries, the stress, my baby survived." Mike felt tears forming in his eyes. "You have a child?" "I have a daughter," Sarah said. "Her name is Hope. I named her Hope because that's what you gave me that day. Hope for a future I thought I'd lost." Mike could barely speak. I saved both of you?" "You did," Sarah confirmed. "And Mike, Hope knows the story. She's known since she was old enough to understand. I've told her about the firefighter who saved our lives, who I could never find, who I never got to thank properly." "Where is she now?" Mike asked. Sarah smiled. "She's outside. I wasn't sure how you'd react to me showing up after 20 years. I didn't want to overwhelm you. But Mike, she's wanted to meet you her entire life. Can I bring her in?" Mike nodded, unable to form words. Sarah went to the door and called out. A moment later, a young woman walked in. She was 20 years old, with Sarah's eyes but a brightness in them that spoke of someone who had grown up loved and safe. "Hope," Sarah said. "This is Michael Johnson. This is the man who saved our lives." Hope walked directly to Mike and wrapped him in a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance to be born. Thank you for saving my mum." Mike hugged her back, tears streaming down his face. For 20 years he had carried the weight of unanswered questions. For 20 years he had wondered about Sarah's fate. And now, here was the answer. Not just survival, but life. New life, a future that existed because of one impossible choice in a moment of crisis. Mike didn't just save one life that day, he saved two. But the story doesn't end here. What Sarah is about to reveal will show you the true power of a single act of courage. Subscribe to see how one moment can echo through generations. Over the next few hours, Sarah told Mike her full story. After being rescued, she had spent 2 months in the hospital recovering from her injuries. Her legs had been badly damaged, requiring multiple surgeries. The doctors weren't sure she'd walk again, but Sarah had fought. Physical therapy, determination, and the knowledge that she was carrying a child gave her a reason to push through every painful step of recovery. "Every time I wanted to give up," Sarah said, "I would think about you, about how you didn't give up when the tower was falling, about how you chose to carry me instead of saving yourself. If you could do that, I could learn to walk again." Hope was born in April 2002, healthy and perfect. Sarah named her Hope Michelle, the middle name in honor of Michael, though at the time Sarah still didn't know Mike's full name. "For years I searched for you," Sarah continued. "I contacted the FDNY, but with 343 firefighters lost that day, their records were in chaos. Nobody could help me identify the specific firefighter who saved me. I had the photograph, but without names, it was just another image from that horrible day. How did you finally find me?" Mike asked. "Facial recognition technology," Hope interjected. "Mum had been searching for years with no luck. Then I went to college for computer science, and I learned about facial recognition software. We uploaded the photo to every database we could find. Last year we finally got a match, a photo from a 9/11 memorial event in 2019. That's when we learned your name. Why did you wait until now to come?" Mike asked. Sarah's expression became serious. "Because I wanted to make sure the timing was right. I wanted to come on a September 11th anniversary, the day that connects us, and I wanted Hope to be old enough to fully understand what this means. She graduated college last year, Mike, with honors. She's a software engineer now, working on technology that helps first responders coordinate during emergencies." Mike looked at Hope with amazement. Hope nodded. "Because of what you did for us, I wanted to spend my life helping people like you save more lives. I developed an app that emergency services in 3 states are now using. Last year alone, it helped coordinate responses that saved 47 lives." Mike felt overwhelmed. He had spent 20 years thinking about the one life he saved that day. Now he was learning that his choice to carry Sarah through the debris had led to Hope's birth, which led to Hope's career, which led to 47 more lives saved. "Mike," Sarah said gently, "do you remember my last words to you that day, before I lost consciousness? You said, 'Please tell them I love them.' I thought I was dying and I wanted you to tell my family I loved them. But Mike, I couldn't finish because I didn't know if my family had survived. My husband worked in the North Tower. My sister worked in the South Tower. I didn't know if there was anyone left to tell. Did they?" Mike couldn't finish the question. "My sister survived," Sarah said. "She was late to work that day. Traffic saved her life. But my husband," her voice caught. "David didn't make it. He was on the 96th floor of the North Tower." Mike felt a deep sadness. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. David's death is why finding you became so important to me," Sarah explained. "You gave me hope, literally and figuratively. You gave me a reason to keep living when I thought I'd lost everything. When I found out I was pregnant, it felt like David had left me one final gift, and you made sure I lived long enough to receive it." The impact of Mike's choice on September 11th reaches further than anyone could have imagined. But there's one more revelation that will bring this full circle. Stay with us and subscribe, because the ending of this story will restore your faith in the power of human connection. Hope pulled out her phone. "Mike, there's something else we want to show you. It's about the impact of what you did." She brought up a photo of a young man, maybe 25 years old, in a firefighter's uniform. "This is James," Hope said. "He's my fiancé. We're getting married next year. And Mike, James is a firefighter with the FDNY. He works at Engine 10, House 10. Mike's eyes widened. "Your fiancé works at my old station?" "It's not a coincidence," Hope said. "When I met James 2 years ago and learned he was a firefighter, I told him my story. I told him about the unknown firefighter who saved my mum and gave me life. James said that story was one of the reasons he became a firefighter, to honor the legacy of heroes like you." "James doesn't know I'm here today," Sarah added. "We wanted to surprise him, but Mike, we were wondering, Would you be willing to meet him, to come to our wedding, to be part of our lives going forward? Mike looked at these two women, Sarah, who he had pulled from the rubble 20 years ago, and Hope, whose very existence was a testament to the power of choosing courage in impossible moments. He thought about all the nights he'd lain awake wondering about Sarah's fate, all the September 11th anniversaries spent in his garden, trying to make peace with unanswered questions. "I would be honored," Mike said, "absolutely honored." Linda, who had been listening quietly from the doorway, came into the room with tears streaming down her face. Mike has spent 20 years carrying the weight of that day, the people he couldn't save, the questions he couldn't answer. "Sarah, Hope, you've given him something he never expected to find, closure. And more than that, you've shown him that his choice to risk everything to save you created ripples of goodness that are still spreading." Sarah stood and walked to Mike. She took his hands in hers. "Mike, you told me you saved 7 people that day, but I want you to understand something. You saved me, you saved Hope, and through Hope's work, you've helped save 47 more people. Through the choice she made to dedicate her life to helping first responders, you're still saving lives. That's 49 lives and counting. And that doesn't even include all the future generations that will exist because Hope exists." Mike was crying openly now. "I just did what any firefighter would have done." "No," Sarah said firmly, "you did what heroes do. When the North Tower was falling, you had a choice. You could have dropped me and run, and nobody would have blamed you. Instead, you carried me, you shielded me with your body. You chose my life over your own safety." Hope added, "And because of that choice, I'm here. My future children will be here. James and I plan to have a family. Mike, your great-great-great-grandchildren will share a world with my children. That's what your courage created, a future that wouldn't have existed." The 4 of them sat together for the next several hours. Sarah and Hope showed Mike photos of Hope growing up. First steps, first day of school, high school graduation, college degree. Every milestone was a reminder of the life that almost wasn't. Mike shared his own story, the years of searching for Sarah, the survivor's guilt, the nightmares, and eventually the healing. He told them about the other people he'd saved that day, and how he'd stayed in touch with some of them. "You should bring them all together," Hope suggested. "Everyone whose life you touched that day. Let them see how their survival created ripples just like mine did." As the sun began to set, Sarah stood to leave, but before she left, she had one more thing to say. "Mike, I've been thinking about this moment for 20 years, thinking about what I would say to you if I ever found you, and I realize that thank you isn't enough. It could never be enough. So instead, I want to say this. Because of you, I got to watch my daughter grow up. Because of you, I got to see her graduate, fall in love, build a career. Because of you, I'll get to walk her down the aisle next year. You didn't just save my life that day, Mike. You gave me a life worth living." Hope hugged Mike one more time. "Will you walk with my mum to give me away at the wedding? I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the reason we're both here. It feels right." Mike, overcome with emotion, nodded. "I would be so honored, so incredibly honored." As Sarah and Hope left, Mike stood in his doorway watching them walk to their car. Linda came up beside him and took his hand. 20 years, Linda said quietly. 20 years of wondering, and now you know, she lived, she thrived, and she brought a beautiful life into this world. "I thought I saved one person that day," Mike said, still processing everything. "I had no idea that one choice would create all of this." That night, Mike couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the photograph Sarah had shown him, the image of him carrying her through the dust cloud, seconds before the North Tower collapse. He had been so certain in that moment that they were both going to die, but they hadn't. They had lived, and more than that, they had created a future together, not romantically, but through the profound connection between someone who saves a life and the life that's saved. Over the next few months, Mike stayed in close contact with Sarah and Hope. He met James, the young firefighter who worked at Mike's old station. James told Mike that the story of the unknown firefighter who saved a pregnant woman had circulated at Engine 10 for years, inspiring new recruits. "I never knew that firefighter was you," James said with amazement. "That story is legendary at the station. It's what we tell new guys when they ask what it means to be FDNY. It's about making the impossible choice when there's no time to think." Mike attended Hope and James's wedding in September 2022. When the moment came for Hope to walk down the aisle, Sarah took one of Mike's arms, and her sister, the one who had survived because she was late to work on 9/11, took the other. Together, the 3 of them walked Hope to the altar. As they walked, Mike thought about the invisible threads that connect all of us, how one moment of courage can echo through time, how one choice can create ripples that spread farther than we can imagine. After the ceremony, Mike was introduced to Hope's grandmother, Sarah's mother, who had lost her son-in-law on 9/11, but gained a granddaughter because of Mike's heroism. "Mr. Johnson," she said, taking his hands in hers, "my family lost so much that day, but we also gained something. We gained hope.
And watching her grow up, watching her become this incredible woman, has been the light that helped us survive the darkness. You gave us that light. This is what heroism really looks like, not just the moment of courage, but the lifetimes of impact that follow. If this story moved you, subscribe to Stories of Valor, because there are more heroes whose stories deserve to be told, and you won't want to miss a single one. Today, Mike is 54 years old. He still lives in that quiet house in New Jersey with Linda. He still tends his garden. But now, on September 11th each year, he doesn't spend the day alone with his memories. He spends it with Sarah, Hope, James, and their growing family. Hope had her first child in 2023, a daughter she named Michelle, in honor of Mike. When Mike held baby Michelle for the first time, the circle felt complete. This child existed because 22 years ago, a firefighter made an impossible choice in an impossible moment. The ripples continue. Hope's software for first responders is now used in 12 states. Last year, it coordinated responses that saved 89 lives. James, inspired by Mike's story, started a training program for new firefighters, focusing on impossible choice scenarios, moments when there's no good option, only the choice to act or to freeze.
And Mike finally found peace with the unanswered questions that had haunted him for 2 decades. He learned that Sarah's last words, "Please tell them," weren't left unfinished after all. Through her life, through Hope's life, through all the lives that their survival has touched, Sarah has been telling them, telling everyone who will listen, that courage matters, that choosing to help, even when it costs you everything, creates a future worth living in. On the 23rd anniversary of September 11th, Mike stood at the memorial in Lower Manhattan with Sarah, Hope, James, and baby Michelle. They were there to honor David, Sarah's husband, Hope's father, the man who didn't make it out that day. But they were also there to honor something else, the power of human connection in the face of tragedy. The way one act of selflessness can create ripples of goodness that spread across generations. As they stood there, Hope turned to Mike and asked, "Do you ever wonder how many other ripples there are from that day? How many lives were saved that went on to create other lives, other futures?" Mike thought about the 7 people he knew he'd saved. He thought about all the other firefighters, police officers, and ordinary citizens who had made similar choices that day. He thought about all the lives saved, all the children born, all the futures created because people chose courage over safety. "I think the ripples are infinite," Mike said. "I think they're still spreading even now. Every child born to someone who survived, every person helped by someone inspired by the heroism they witnessed, every act of kindness sparked by the memory of that day. The ripples never stop." Sarah added, "That's what people don't understand about heroism. They think it's about the moment, the rescue, the sacrifice, the dramatic action. But real heroism is about all the moments that come after, all the lives that get to continue, all the futures that get to exist." As the sun set over the memorial, Mike held baby Michelle while her parents stood with their arms around Sarah. This was his legacy, not just the rescue, but everything that came after. Not just saving a life, but giving that life the chance to create more life, more love, more goodness in the world. That evening, Mike received a message from one of the other people he'd saved on September 11th, a man named Robert, who had been trapped on the 19th floor of the North Tower. The message read, "Mike, I wanted you to know that my daughter just got accepted to medical school. She's going to be a doctor because she says she wants to save lives like you saved mine." The ripples continue. Mike showed the message to Linda. "They really do continue, don't they? The ripples." Linda smiled. "That's the thing about dropping a stone in water, Mike. You never see where the ripples end. They just keep going, touching shores you never knew existed." Mike thought about that photograph, the one Sarah had carried for 20 years. The image of him carrying her through the dust cloud, both of them covered in debris, the North Tower collapsing behind them. In that frozen moment, captured by a photographer whose name they'd never know, was the essence of everything Mike had learned about heroism. It wasn't about being fearless. Mike had been terrified that day. It wasn't about being certain of success. Mike had been convinced they would both die. It was about choosing to act anyway, choosing to carry someone who needed help, even when carrying them might cost you everything. And it was about understanding that we never fully know the impact of our choices. We can't see the future we're creating when we choose courage in the present. We just have to trust that choosing to help, choosing to sacrifice, choosing to put others first will create ripples of goodness that spread farther than we can imagine. Today, Mike sometimes gives talks at firehouses and first responder trainings. He tells Sarah and Hope's story, but he always ends with the same message. "I thought I saved one life that day. I was wrong. I saved 2, and those 2 lives have gone on to touch hundreds of others." That's what I want you to understand about the work you do. You don't just save lives, you save futures. You save all the moments and connections and possibilities that those lives will create. The person you rescue today might give birth to the person who cures cancer tomorrow. The child you pull from a burning building might grow up to be the teacher who inspires a generation. You never know what future you're saving, you just have to choose to save it. 23 years after September 11, 2001, Mike Johnson finally understands the full impact of the choice he made in that moment of crisis. By choosing to carry Sarah, instead of saving only himself, he didn't just preserve 2 lives, he created a legacy of courage, compassion, and connection that continues to spread. And somewhere in New Jersey, in a garden tended by a retired firefighter, tomatoes grow in soil enriched by the understanding that every act of courage we perform sends ripples through time, touching lives and creating futures we'll never live to see, but that exist because we chose, in one impossible moment, to be heroes. In 2024, something extraordinary happened that brought the story full circle in a way no one could have predicted. Hope's software company, which she had named Ripple Response Technologies, was featured in a national news segment about innovations in emergency services. During the interview, Hope told the story of how her company was born from her mother's rescue on 9/11. The segment aired on the evening news, and within hours, Mike's phone started ringing. It wasn't just friends and family calling, it was people from all over the country, survivors from 9/11, family members of victims, and even other first responders who had been there that day. One call stood out above all the others. "Mr. Johnson, my name is David Chen. I think you saved my mother that day too. She was in the South Tower, and a firefighter carried her out right before the North Tower collapsed. We've been trying to find that firefighter for 23 years. Mike's heart raced. Could there have been another rescue he didn't remember? The day had been such chaos, such a blur of action and terror. "Tell me about your mother," Mike said. "Her name was Lisa Chen. She worked on the 82nd floor. She passed away 5 years ago from cancer. But before she died, she made me promise to find the firefighter who saved her. She wanted him to know that because of him, she got to see me graduate high school, go to college, get married, and hold her grandchildren. She wanted him to know that his courage gave her 19 extra years of life." Mike felt tears forming. He didn't specifically remember Lisa Chen, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that this was another ripple he'd never known about. Over the next few weeks, 6 more people contacted Mike. Each one believed they might have been saved by him that day. The photograph that Sarah had shown him was circulated online, and people began recognizing the scene, the location, the moment. Some of the connections were confirmed, others remained uncertain, but each person had the same message: "Because of a firefighter like you, I got extra years, I got to live, and I want you to know what those years meant." Mike started keeping a journal of all these stories. A woman who went on to become a nurse, saving countless lives herself. A man who adopted 4 children who needed homes. A teacher who influenced thousands of students. A scientist working on climate change solutions. An artist whose work brought joy to millions. Each life saved on 9/11 had created its own set of ripples, spreading out in directions no one could have predicted. The reunion. On September 11, 2025, the 24th anniversary, Mike organized something unprecedented. With Sarah and Hope's help, he brought together everyone he had definitively saved that day, plus many others who believed they might have been rescued by firefighters from Engine 10. The gathering was held at a community center near the 9/11 memorial. 73 people attended, survivors, their children, their grandchildren, and in some cases their great-grandchildren. Mike stood before them, overwhelmed by the sight of all these lives, all these futures that existed because firefighters had made impossible choices in impossible moments. "I want to start by saying this isn't about me," Mike began. "This is about all of us, about what we created together on that horrible day. You survived, you lived, you built families, careers, legacies, and I'm honored to see the proof of what choosing courage in a moment of crisis can create." One by one, people stood and shared their stories. A woman named Patricia talked about how she had been pulled from the 15th floor by a firefighter she never got to thank. She went on to become a therapist specializing in trauma, helping 9/11 survivors process their experiences. A man named Marcus described how a firefighter had given him a breathing mask and helped him down 40 flights of stairs. Marcus became a marathon runner and raised millions for first responder charities. Sarah stood and told her story again, but this time Hope was beside her, holding baby Michelle. "This is my daughter," Sarah said, "and this is her daughter. 3 generations that exist because Mike Johnson chose to carry me instead of saving only himself." Then James, Hope's husband and Mike's successor at Engine 10, stood to speak. "I wasn't there on 9/11, I was only 3 years old, but I grew up hearing the stories,
And when I learned that my future wife's life was saved by a firefighter from the station where I now work, I understood something profound. We're all connected by invisible threads of courage and consequence. Every life saved creates a future. Every future creates more futures, and it never stops. The next generation. After the reunion, Mike received a letter from a high school in Manhattan. A history teacher had used Hope's story and Mike's heroism as a teaching tool for her students. She assigned them a project: trace the ripples from a single act of courage. The students researched 9/11 survivors and documented not just their survival, but everything that came after: children born, businesses started, innovations created, lives touched. The students calculated that the approximately 20,000 people who survived the attacks, many because of first responders like Mike, had collectively given birth to over 8,000 children in the years since. Those children would have children. The mathematical ripples were staggering. One student, a girl named Emma, came to interview Mike for her project. She asked him a question that would stay with him. "Mr. Johnson, do you think the people who didn't survive that day would want us to remember them through grief, or through celebrating the lives that were saved?"
Mike thought carefully. "I think they'd want both. The grief honors who they were. The celebration honors what the survivors have built. Both matter." Emma's project won a national award. In her presentation, she said something that brought Mike to tears. "Mr. Johnson saved my grandmother that day. I exist because of his courage. My children will exist because of his courage. His courage didn't just save one moment, it saved infinite moments, all the moments that every future generation will live." The full circle. In 2026, on what would have been the 25th anniversary, Mike received news that completed the circle in the most unexpected way. Hope called him, her voice shaking with emotion. "Mike, you need to sit down for this. We just found out something incredible about James's family history." "What is it?" "James's father. His father was in the North Tower on 9/11. He was a financial analyst on the 97th floor. James always knew his father died that day, but we just discovered something from his father's company records. His father was supposed to be in a meeting on the 97th floor at 8:30 a.m., but he was running late. He was in the elevator when the plane hit. He survived the initial impact and made it down to the 50th floor before the building collapsed." Mike felt a chill run through him. "Are you saying?" "The records show that several firefighters from Engine 10 were on the 50th floor around that time, helping people evacuate." "Mike, there's a chance you helped save James's father, even if only by helping him get down those extra floors that gave him time to get out." Mike sat in stunned silence. James, the firefighter who had married Hope, who worked at Mike's old station, who had been inspired by the story of Mike's courage, might have been connected to Mike all along. "We can't prove it definitively," Hope continued, "but the timeline matches, the location matches." And Mike, James's father's last words to his family on the phone were, "There are firefighters here helping us. I'm going to make it." He didn't make it out, but he made it far enough down that he wasn't trapped where the plane hit. Someone helped him get that far. Mike thought about the dozens of people he had helped that day in the North Tower. He couldn't remember every face, every name, but he remembered the desperate efforts to get people down floor by floor, helping anyone who needed it. "Whether it was me specifically or one of my brothers from Engine 10, Mike said quietly, "we were all doing the same work, helping everyone we could." "That's what James said," Hope replied. "He said it doesn't matter if it was specifically you. What matters is that firefighters like you gave his father extra time to make one last call to his family, time to tell them he loved them. That's a gift too." The ultimate ripple. That revelation led to a profound realization. James existed because his father had lived long enough to meet his mother years before 9/11. Hope existed because Mike had saved Sarah, and now James and Hope had created baby Michelle together. This meant that Michelle, this beautiful child born in 2023, was the product of multiple acts of courage from 9/11. Her very existence was a testament to the interconnected ripples of heroism from that day. When Mike held Michelle at her first birthday party in 2024, he whispered to her, "Your existence is proof that courage matters, that choosing to help, even when it's terrifying, creates futures that wouldn't otherwise exist. You are the living embodiment of ripples upon ripples of heroism." Linda, watching her husband with the child, squeezed his hand. 25 years ago, you ran into a collapsing building. Today, you're holding the proof that it mattered. Mike's final reflection. In late 2026, Mike was invited to speak at the 9/11 Museum. He stood in front of hundreds of people, survivors, family members, students, and fellow first responders, and shared what he had learned in the 25 years since that terrible day. "When I carried Sarah through that dust cloud, I thought I knew what I was doing. I was saving one life. That was my entire focus in that moment, get this one person to safety. But I was wrong about what I was doing. I wasn't saving one life, I was saving thousands of moments. Sarah's moments with her daughter, Hope's moments with her husband, Michelle's moments that haven't even happened yet. Every person in this room who survived that day has created millions of moments since then, moments of joy, love, growth, and connection. That's what heroism really is. It's not about the dramatic moment of rescue, it's about all the undramatic moments that get to happen because of that rescue. It's breakfast with family, it's first days of school, it's graduations and weddings and grandchildren, it's ordinary moments that are extraordinary because they almost didn't happen. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: we are all connected by invisible threads. Every choice we make sends ripples into the future. Every time we choose courage over safety, compassion over indifference, action over paralysis, we create futures we'll never see but that exist because we chose to be brave. I was just one firefighter among thousands who made difficult choices on 9/11, but each of those choices created ripples, and those ripples are still spreading. They'll keep spreading long after all of us are gone. That's the real legacy of heroism, not the medals or recognition, but the infinite futures created by finite acts of courage. When Mike finished speaking, the entire room stood in silence for a moment. Then, slowly, a single person began to clap. Then another, then another. Soon the entire room was applauding, not just for Mike, but for every first responder who had made similar choices that day. Sarah and Hope were in the front row, with James holding Michelle. 4 generations of ripples, all visible in one moment. Today, Mike Johnson is 56 years old. He still lives in that quiet house in New Jersey. He still tends his garden, but his garden has become something more than just a place to grow tomatoes. In one corner, he planted a tree, a survivor tree, grown from a seedling taken from a tree that survived the 9/11 attacks. Around that tree, he created a small memorial garden with plaques bearing the names of the 15 firefighters from Engine 10 who didn't come home that day. But he also added something else, a bench inscribed with words that capture everything he's learned. Every act of courage creates ripples, every ripple creates futures, every future matters. Sarah and Hope visit regularly. Michelle is learning to walk in Mike's garden, taking her first steps in the same place where Mike processes his memories of that terrible day. The symbolism isn't lost on anyone. New life, new steps, new futures, all growing in soil enriched by understanding. Hope's company continues to expand. Her software now helps coordinate emergency responses in 18 states and has contributed to saving over 200 lives. Each of those lives will create their own ripples. James is now a captain at Engine 10, training new firefighters in the same traditions of courage and sacrifice that Mike embodied. He tells Mike's story to every new recruit, making sure they understand that the job isn't just about the immediate rescue, it's about all the futures that rescue creates. And somewhere in Manhattan, in the 9/11 Museum archives, there's a photograph. It shows a firefighter carrying a woman through a dust cloud, seconds before a tower collapses. The photo is labeled now, Michael Johnson, Engine 10, carrying Sarah Mitchell to safety, September 11, 2000. This single act of courage created ripples that continue to spread today. But what the photo doesn't show, what no photograph could ever capture, is the invisible web of futures that radiate from that moment. Hope's life, Michelle's life, the 200 lives saved by Hope's software, the countless firefighters inspired by James's leadership, the thousands of students who have learned from this story, the infinite ripples still spreading, still touching lives, still creating futures. This is what Mike Johnson learned in the 25 years after September 11, 2001. Heroism isn't measured in the moment of action, it's measured in all the moments that get to happen because of that action. It's measured in lives lived, children born, futures created, and most importantly, he learned that we never truly know the full impact of choosing courage. We drop the stone into the water, we create the ripple, and then we trust that the ripple will reach shores we'll never see, because that's what heroes do. They create futures, they save not just lives but all the infinite moments those lives will contain. They choose action over paralysis, courage over fear, and in doing so they change the shape of history itself. Mike sometimes looks at that survivor tree in his garden and thinks about all the trees that will grow from its seeds, all the forests of the future that will exist because this one tree survived. That's his legacy. That's every first responder's legacy. Not the rescue itself, but the forest of futures that grows from it. And on quiet mornings, when Mike works in his garden, he sometimes pauses and closes his eyes. He thinks about Sarah, about Hope, about Michelle. He thinks about all the people he saved, and all the people he couldn't save. He thinks about the ripples still spreading from that terrible heroic day, and he understands, finally and completely, what it means to be a hero. It means planting seeds you'll never see grow into trees. It means creating futures you'll never live to witness. It means choosing, in one impossible moment, to carry someone to safety, and in doing so, carrying entire generations of lives that wouldn't otherwise exist.
This is the story of Michael Johnson. This is the story of Sarah Mitchell and Hope Michelle Mitchell. This is the story of baby Michelle and all the futures she'll create. But more than that, this is the story of every act of courage, every impossible choice, every moment when someone decides that another person's life is worth risking everything for, because those moments don't end when the rescue is complete. Those moments echo through time, creating ripples that spread forever, touching lives and building futures until the end of time itself. That's the power of heroism. That's the legacy of courage. That's what Mike Johnson learned on September 11th, 2001, and every day since. The ripples never stop. They just keep going, touching shores we never knew existed, creating futures we never imagined possible. And somewhere in those ripples, in those infinite futures, the true meaning of that terrible day lives on, not in the destruction, but in the determination to choose life, choose courage, choose to save others, even when saving yourself seems impossible. This is Stories of Valor, where heroes are remembered, where ripples are celebrated, where we understand that every act of courage, no matter how small it seems in the moment, can change the entire course of human history. Mike's story shows us that heroism isn't about one moment, it's about infinite moments that follow. If this story moved you, if it changed how you think about courage and consequence, subscribe to Stories of Valor, because there are more heroes out there whose stories deserve to be told, more ripples that need to be traced, more futures that exist because someone chose to be brave. Hit that subscribe button now. Share this story with someone who needs to understand the power of choosing courage. And remember, you never know what future you're creating when you choose to help someone in their moment of need. The ripples you create today might still be spreading 100 years from now. Make sure they're ripples of courage, compassion, and hope. This is Stories of Valor, where every hero gets remembered, where every ripple gets traced, where we understand that courage creates futures. Thank you for watching, and remember, you might be someone's Mike Johnson. You might be the person who saves a life that goes on to save 100 more. Choose courage, create ripples, change the future.